Half a day. The Committee on Health, Land, Justice, and Culture is now called to order. Today's Monday, November 21, 2022, and the time is 5:10 p.m. In compliance with the Open Government Law, notices for this public hearing were published in the Guam Daily Post on Monday, November 14th, and again on Friday, November 18, 2022, as well as the hearings being live streamed via the Guam Legislature's YouTube channel. Notices were also sent via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets. I believe the notice was also published in the Government of Guam portal for notices. Individuals testifying today shall first be recognized by the chair before speaking, and please begin by stating your name for record-keeping purposes. There's only one agenda item, but it's a big one. That's Bill number 356-36 COR, sponsored by myself, Therese M. Terlaje. It's an act to amend Section 12801B, 12803C15, 12805A23910, Section 12805J 3AB, Section 12820A 1112. Section 12826, Section 12903, Section 12905, Section 121101B, Section 121102E, Section 121103, Section 121291A1, Section 121201F1, Section 121204C, Section 12150D, 501D, so that was Section 12501D, Section 121903, Section 12904, Section 12906, Section 122101C and D, and to repeal and reenact Section 12101G, 12101N, 12101P, 12101V, and 12802A, 1, 3, 7, and 13, and Section 12802B3, Section 12809, Section 12819, Section 12827, Section 12901, Section 12902, Section 12120, Section 121202, Section 122104, and to add a new Section 12901.1, Section 12906, Section 11504.1, Section 122106, and all of these are in Chapter 12 of Title 10, Guam Code Annotated. And to repeal existing Guam Allied Health Examiners rules and regulations pertaining to the practice of acupuncture, superseded by new rules relative to approving the adoption of comprehensive new rules and regulations for the Guam Board of Allied Health Examiners. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of my colleagues today, beginning with Senator Tello Taitagui, Senator Joanne Brown, Senator Frank Blas. Thank you, colleagues, for being here today. All right, so as the sponsor of the bill, I will introduce the bill for those who are watching. So Bill number 356-36 COR was introduced at the request of the Guam Board of Allied Health Examiners and seeks to amend the current Guam Board of Allied Health Examiners rules and regulations, as well as some of its statutes. The draft bill was unanimously approved and passed on November 4, 2022, and submitted to the committee from the Guam Board of Allied Health on November 7, 2022. They had presented it for public review and comment as a product of an endeavor it had been working on since 2016, proposed legislation and comprehensive overhaul of the GBAHE's administrative rules and regulations designed to strengthen and modernize the allied health practice and the rules and regulations that govern the practice of allied health professions. Since its creation in 1998 with Public Law 24-329, some of these laws and rules have had some minor changes, but a comprehensive update in the last 2 decades has not happened until now. So I want to congratulate the Board of Allied Health for all their work in this regard. The Board of Allied Health, in its statement of policy in its enabling act, was granted the following. Quote, "The practice of allied health is a privilege granted by the people acting through their elected representatives. It is not a natural right of individuals. In the interests of public health, safety, and welfare, and to protect the public from the unprofessional, improper, incompetent, unlawful, fraudulent, and/or deceptive practice of allied health professions, it is necessary to provide laws and regulations to govern the granting and subsequent use of the privilege to practice allied health professions. The primary responsibility and obligation of the Guam Board of Allied Health Examiners is to protect the people of Guam." So the board conducted multiple hearings on the proposed updated rules and regulations on Friday, October 7, Tuesday, October 11, and Thursday, October 13, which discussed the changes that were being made. So some of what this bill will do is change the composition of the Board of Allied Health Examiners to include 2 public members. Amendments to the definition and scope of practice of the healing arts and the professions of acupuncture and oriental medicine, chiropractic, and dietetics and nutrition. Amendments to the prescriptive authority for clinical psychologists and other allied health professions. Amendments to the Guam Board of Allied Health Examiners fee schedule, budget, and revolving fund. Amendments to the continuing education requirements. Amendments to the rules governing the practice of veterinary medicine. It will repeal all prior administrative rules and regulations and replace them with these comprehensive new administrative rules and regulations. It is their belief that these updates will improve the health and safety of the people of the island of Guam. And that's my belief as well, and that's why I was willing to introduce this bill. All right, so that's the end of my intro on the bill. The bill's quite lengthy, and so just for those who are watching, we've got sections of the code, Title 10, Guam Code Annotated, which are being either amended or repealed, as I read in the title, or added. And then also, we are in Section 44, approving the administrative rules and regulations attached hereto as Exhibit A. So we're making all these changes to the code and attaching an exhibit, which are the new rules and regulations as well. All right, so for the record, in addition to stakeholders' invitations were sent to the Guam Board of Allied Health Examiners, the Guam Medical Society, the Guam Medical Association, the Health Professional Licensing, and the EMS office, and of course the public. So we will now accept testimony. We'll begin with, so seated at the panel right now are the members of the Guam Board of Allied Health Examiners. And we'll begin then with their chairperson, Dr. Mamie Balahaja. If you would like to present testimony or first introduce the members, that would be great. Wait, okay, so press the button first so we can record you. Yeah.
Thank you, Speaker. Yes, let me introduce the members of the Guam Board of Allied Health Examiners present today. They're Nadine Cepeda, Vince Peretta.
Dr. Mamie, would you mind stating their profession?
Oh, sorry.
So just for the public, so the Guam Board of Allied Health is made up of a composite of different professions, so it's supposed to be represented on this board. Please proceed.
Okay. The individual represented by the board here who are present are Dr. Pomis, veterinarian, Sybil Chrysostomo, speech-language pathology, Dr. Greg Miller, chiropractor, myself, Mamie Balahaja, clinical psychologist, Mr. Vince Peretta, licensed professional counselor, and Nadine Cepeda present representing licensed marriage family therapist and licensed mental health counselor. And also present is our legal counsel, Assistant Attorney General Rob Weinberg.
Thank you very much. Would you like to present testimony? You may proceed.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Senator Terlaje, Senator Joanne Brown, and Senator Frank Blas Jr. Madam Speaker and the distinguished members of the 36th Guam Legislature, I'm Mamie Balahadia, licensed clinical psychologist representing clinical psychologists on the Guam Board of Allied Health Examiner, and I'm the current chair. I appear before you today for full support of Bill 356-36. The subject bill is to amend sections, repeal and enact a new section to the Guam Code Annotated Chapter 12, Title 10, and as well as to repeal existing rules and regulations of the existing Guam Board Allied Health Rules and Regulation of Acupuncture, and to approve an adoption of comprehensive new rules and regulations of the Allied Health Board. For purpose of the introduction, the Guam Allied Health Board is one of 9 boards under the Commission on the Healing Arts of Guam. 1, the Guam Board of Allied Health Examiners. 2, the Guam Board of Barbering and Cosmetology. 3, the Guam Board of Examiners for Dentistry, and Guam Board of Medical Examiners. 5, the Board of Nursing Examiners. 6, the Board of Examiners for Optometry. 7, the Guam Board of Examiners for Pharmacy. And 8, the Guam Board of Social Work, and 9, Emergency Medical Services. Currently, the administrative support and budgeting are provided by the Health License Professional Licensing Office under the Director's Office of the Department of Public Health and Social Services. The Guam Board of Allied Health Examiner is currently comprised of 16 health professionals: 1 acupuncture, 2 audiology, 3 chiropractic, 4 clinical psychology, 5 licensed professional counselor, 6 licensed mental health counselor, 7 marriage family therapy, 8 occupational therapy, 9 physical therapy, 10 physician assistant, 11 podiatry medicine, 12 speech language pathology, 13 veterinary medicine, 14 respiratory therapy, 15 clinical dietitian and nutritionist, and 16 nursing home administrator. As of this date, there are 470 licensees under the Guam Board of Allied Health Examiners. The proposed rules and regulation before you today is an accumulation from at least 6 years of examinations, research, discussions, and more discussions by this board, while all along under the guidance of the board's legal counsel. The board conducted 3 public hearings, October 7, 11th, and 13, 2022, to gather feedbacks and recommendations. The board took all oral and written materials and incorporated in the final proposed rules and regulations submitted to the Speaker and the Governor, and this long overdue document is before you today, is in Bill 356-36. Most notable issues brought to the board's attention by the licensees and the public are: 1, proposed fee schedule. On that section on fees, the board studied the fees under the Region 9 jurisdictions, which Guam is under, and 7 other states suggested by licensee: Alaska, Hawaii, California, Washington, Oregon, and Montana, Idaho, Ohio, Kentucky, Nevada, Arizona, and New Mexico. Other states' fees were examined by the board's treasurer, Catherine St. Nicholas, and HPLO administrative officials, Brianna Sablon and Zania Pacina. Their opinions were that comparing the proposed fees and of other states, there are no significant differences concerning the required expenditures of staffing and administrative support. Even with the proposed fees, if approved by the 36th Guam Legislature, they are not enough to cover the cost of procuring legal services of attorney, inspector, investigator, to responsible expeditiously to complaints. As of the last board meeting of November 4, 2022, the board has 32 complaints filed with with the board from 2015 to present. Outstanding complaints against licensees are 15 against veterinarians, 3 against respiratory therapists, 2 against chiropractors, 3 against acupuncturists, 1 against marriage family therapists, 1 against audiologists. 7 complaints were filed against chiropractic practice without a license. 2, continuing education hours for renewals. 6 hours ethics for clinical psychologists, licensed professional counselor, licensed mental health counselor, marriage and family therapist, and 2 hours of ethics for other professions. Noted. 3, substance abuse testing and monitoring applicants. 4, defer action for impaired practitioner. 5, temporary license. 6, board member standards. 7, public records and complaints. 8, dry needling. Physical therapists at the public hearing conducted by the board want dry needling in their practice. This section outlined the qualification required for dry needling practice. 9, for veterinarian practice, extensive outline in the rules of practice under the section 121903. Exceptions to licensure requirements and section 121906, trained persons performing animal euthanasia. Number 10, section 10306, licensed psychology associate. The provision provides graduates with a master's degree in clinical psychology and related field the opportunity to serve this community while under the supervision of upper-leveled licensees in the mental health and substance-related disorder in clinics or facilities. This also encourages more local graduates to pursue higher education in order to better serve this community. Due to the limited number of licensed clinical psychologists or psychiatrists on island, licensed professional counselors with at least some years of practice in the field ought to be able to provide supervision for licensed psychology associates to obtain their clinical hours under supervision. And the fourth item, the last item, 12, prescriptive authority for clinical psychologists. As stated on the qualifications required for clinical psychologists to be given independent prescribing authority, it is only timely that we are doing so as that psychiatrists who normally prescribe are not available or limiting their practice today. It makes sense that a well-trained and qualified clinical psychologist are authorized to prescribe psychotropic medications only so that patients are better served. Currently, there are 2 local clinical psychologists on island, educated and trained to prescribe. As a clinical psychologist, I'm advocating for them and patients with mental health and substance abuse disorders requiring medication to ease their sufferings. So, in summary, number 1, the board looks forward to the 36th Guam legislation passing this bill 356. 2, the board wants to acknowledge the many hours of hard work and perseverance shown by Legal Counsel Assistant Attorney General Robert Weinberg. The board appreciates Attorney General Leland Camacho and Deputy AG Carl Espondon for their support as well. 3, the board also wants to acknowledge HPLO staff who provided many hours of support and directions of proper Governor Guam procedures. 4, last but not least, the board wants to acknowledge Therese Kakas, an MSW student at University of Hawaii, who did the research of fees of aforementioned states. Ms. Kakas is currently obtaining her internship hours under the supervision of Nadine Cepeda, board member. The Guam Board of Allied Health Examiners appreciates the opportunity to appear before the Committee of Health, Land, Justice, and Culture today. This is respectfully submitted to the speaker and to the committee members. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Terlaje. Is there any other member of the board who would like to testify? So,
I don't have any written testimony. I just want to present
Please
my
state your
perspective.
name. Okay, please state your name for the record.
My name is Vincent Pareda. I serve currently as the Vice Chair of the Guam Board of Allied Health Examiners, and I also oversee and deal with the 3 counselor licensees that we currently license: the licensed professional counselor, the licensed mental health counselor, and the licensed marriage and family therapist counselor. All of these 3 licensees have been licensed by the board since, I believe, 2013 by a law that was passed into law by then Governor Governor Eddie Calvo. And so since that time, Guam has been able to license these 3 types of licensees to provide the full range of comprehensive counseling that is needed to address our local population. And that's to deal with individuals, marital situations, as well as couples and groups. And so we've been in practice since that time. And prior to that, we had the individual marriage and family therapy license, which is no longer in effect. Now, I've served on this board prior to the legislature enacting the term limits. I've been on this board for, I would say, close to 20 years. And it's been my privilege to see the evolution and the maturity over those years in bringing about the licensure of license in the interest of protecting our public against any problems that could result from the unorthodox or unauthorized practice of counseling. And over the past 2 or 3 years, it's been the board's task of taking a look at what needs to happen to really update and modernize our rules and regulations. Because while we've offered licensing since, I believe, 1998, was it? Since 1998, there has been really little effort to upgrade and modernize the practice in terms of updating the rules and regulations and taking a look at other disciplines that we felt that might be better off perhaps being transferred out of our board and better served if placed in another board. And I'm not sure whether we're going to address this today, but that was one of the tasks that our board has been addressing with. And so the only thing I would like to point out is that it's been a long haul. It's been a work of 2 or 3 years of work meetings and going over section by section this voluminous piece of legislation in order to bring this to fruition. And that's basically what I wanted to state today. And I'm here to respond to any questions that the public might have with regard to issues relating to the 3 licenses that Nadine Cepeda and I oversee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other member of the board? Ms. Cepeda.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Terlaje, and other distinguished senators. My name is Nadine Cepeda. I'm currently the secretary for the board, but like Mr. Pareda said, I also represent licensed professional counselors, licensed marriage family therapists, and licensed mental health counselors. I've been in here, this is my second term, 6 years into serving. And I truly say that we've been working really hard to get this passed. More importantly, it's because of things evolving. It's really with education requirements and training that we've decided to make it national standards. So if our people decide to go off island, they will be just as trained and prepared to provide therapy. And for all the other boards, we've worked really, really hard. I can only speak for my profession and specialty. We are seeing more concerns rise and come about ethical complaints. I recently served 3 years at the Marriage Family Regulatory Board, which is at the national level for marriage family therapists. And the research indicates just alone there are over 150 complaints about ethical campaigns, dual relationship, and so forth. We're seeing that to be more obvious, and not so much the relationship with clients or with therapists. It's really about protecting our people in the community. And we've worked really hard with the guidance of our legal counsel and everyone in the board that has met tirelessly different hours to come up and compromise with our constituents to see what would be appropriate. And this is a document that we've compromised. And we're asking you to please support this as we are supporting this, because truly it is reflecting the standards that we need to be, recognizing, and I'm an advocate for people who are going to school here, does not have to leave Guam, homegrown. As a former supervisor at Guam Behavioral Health, which was Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse, my degree is in psychology, and I have my second master's in counseling. It shuts out people who does not have a social work degree. And that is unfair to our Native people, homegrown here, that we need to provide that opportunity to provide who's just as educated, as just as skilled, to provide that opportunity for them to service our people. There are not enough of us. I'm currently a school psychologist at DOE, and the numbers are rising. And we currently don't even have enough in our private practice, because we all have jobs in the government or in the federal government, and then we moonlight. The numbers continue to rise. We need to really get this through, so then it holds all of us accountable in all our specialties. And it's really regulating, and it's protecting our community. So senators, I'm pleading with you. I'm very passionate when I advocate and when I do something, because we are trying to make a difference. Just like you make a difference. And we ask you to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cepeda. Anyone else on the board? Dr. Miller.
Madam Chair, distinguished members of the committee, I'd just like to say that in order to have a strong medical profession on Guam, that has to be backed up by a strong and diverse allied health system, because they play off each other a lot. And the allied health is broad in scope. We support the patients a lot of times on referral from medical doctors, or we just take over where they don't, where the medical doctors just are too busy to practice with them. And then the other part, like Ms. Cepeda mentioned, is it's very difficult to get our homegrown students to come back home. We've had, I think, currently 4 recently graduate. It takes 8 years to get a chiropractic degree. They take their boards, but they don't come back because the scope of practice here is antiquated. I'm talking about chiropractic students. And reimbursement is low. And we need to make it attractive for them to return. Right now, there's really no reason for them to return. They can do much better back there. They can operate at a better scope of practice. And so it's time for the update. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. Sorry, but would you state your name for the record, please?
Oh, I apologize. Dr. Gregory Miller, chiropractor, member of the Allied Health Board.
Thank you. All right, any other member of the board who would like to testify at this time? If not, I'm going to ask a few questions and then ask my colleagues to ask questions before we hear from the next panel. So, Dr. Balahaja, could you please, or Chairman, could you please, let's start with the fees. Explain the difference in fees and how you came to these amounts.
We're looking at, the proposed fees are being looked at and compared with the other states, as I said in my testimony. And the fees are gathered so that it could support the operations of HPLO. And as indicated in my testimony, they are legal services, primarily, procuring attorney, inspector, and investigator. And currently, with the complaints, board members are investigators, which we should not be. So if I'm the investigator, I won't be able to vote on the particular complaint when it comes to a decision. Those individuals' profession are necessary to run a proficient operations in looking at regulations and licensing. So even with there are some question whether the fees that we're collecting is supporting the whole Health Professional Licensing Office. Our fee schedule is only supporting a portion. So every board, accordingly, the other boards are to come up with a fee schedule so that they can fully support the operations. We are just one portion of the whole picture of supporting HPLO, other than, of course, the legislature appropriation, on an annual basis. It might look a significant increase, but actually, if you look at it, it's not. We have not had a fee schedule change since 1999. So this fee is since 1999. Even with inflation, I don't know how to calculate because I'm not an economist. But looking at it is that just even with the fees that we proposed, it's not enough to fund the full operation of the office. So we're expecting, and hopefully the other boards is going to come to the legislature for fee also increase so that they would be providing funding for portion of the operation of the HPLO. I don't know if I answered because I have.
Yes, could I ask you, is it currently, currently your license fee or license application fee is about $125?
Yes.
And a renewal fee is $80?
Correct.
So what would another license fee look like under the new rules?
Well,
It looks to me like they're different by profession, is that correct?
that's correct.
All right. Colleagues, this is on page 44
Yeah,
of the
correct.
Exhibit A.
We're studying all the professions under the Allied Health Board, and not all of them are the same. For example, I can speak for clinical psychology. Initial application we're proposing is $350, and renewal is $250. It looks like it is a lot. Even chiropractic, it's a lot. But actually, if you calculate, my goodness, I'm looking at it, we're the one that has the highest fee schedule, including acupuncture. But if you look at it, comparing and all the funding that needs to be for the operations, it is not really that high. But we take considerations of the assistant, the intern. They are not going to be charged with a higher fee as a regular licensed person because they are in a different level. So we have that considered. We're now charging $150, for example, like euthanasia tech, in another bill that came about, Senator Brown. That's very important. So we never charged euthanasia tech any fee, but now that they're going to be charged $150, renewal $100. This is not something arbitrarily. We've studied it. We've studied other states, and we studied the comparison and also the level of each profession. We cannot be making all the profession at the same level,
Right.
but what is, what it encompasses their practice. So
All right.
that's the explanation that I can give you.
Okay, and you gave an estimate that implementing these new fees would bring in only about $62,000 a year, even with these increases.
According to the calculation by our treasurer and HPLO, official, yes.
Okay.
And it's not really enough really to support, the renting of a Xerox machine that they have already, on, one license is not even enough to cover it already.
Right.
So, and remember, we have not had a fee schedule change since 1999.
Okay, sure. So you listed contractual costs such as legal services, copying services, internet, video conferencing, live streaming now required by law, and of course the investigators and the other attorney positions that all the boards are sharing costs on. And at your hearings that you had on these measures, did you get objection to these changes in the fees?
Well, of course, we have licensees not the public, the licensees show concern that they're kind of like high, but we've studied it, and we just not arbitrarily say, okay, we want to charge you $250, you know. But we study it, and in comparison to the profession, and that is, so we come up with this proposed fee schedule.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. And all right, there was a suggestion we received in written testimony from the University of Guam College of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences. I think some of them are here today. But this is, they suggested that the licensed psychology associate be changed to add licensed professional counselors and other licensed mental health professional counselors and other licensed mental health professionals as potential supervisors. And I think you also said that in your testimony, but when you read the proposed rule, I'm looking at page 15 of the proposed rules and regulations, it says under the immediate supervisor, in other words, a psychology associate may practice under the immediate supervision of a licensed clinical psychologist or licensed psychiatrist only, and they're suggesting these others be allowed to supervise as well. That's not right? Okay, then I'm going to wait for them to testify. I just want to get your opinion on that, then we'll come back to that later. All right.
Speaker, this is indicated in item number 10. concern-
Supervisors. Item number 10.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
At page 2.
Okay.
Senator Terlaje, just as a correction, the application fee totals $250.
I'm sorry, I can't hear
The
you.
application fee totals $250 at this time, and then the renewal is $80,
Oh.
because there's 2 fees involved in
Okay.
the application.
Oh, all right then. Oh, so
And then-
some of these are not increased?
Yeah, and another thing, in our Article 8, it was initially proposed that we would be supplied a lawyer and I believe, investigator, but then that was taken out a couple of governors ago, so that added to our expense.
That's correct. It was my understanding you would be provided a hearings officer as well. All right. All right. All right. Are there any other senators with questions or comments? Senator Taitzigui.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and good afternoon to the board. I know this is a long-time project that's been in the making, and I'm glad we're here today to try and resolve some of the issues that you come across your desk and try to clear up any concerns as well as, questions about the requirement for the board. One of them, though, before I move into that, I'm looking at the bill itself, and where it says Exhibit A, I'm looking at the very last page where it ends in 101370, which says mandatory compulsory reporting. Okay, but there is no 10138, which 1308 is reporting of minor incidents. But it is in here, but it's not in the index. I didn't know if that was a mistake or it was intended to incorporate all the sections in the index side, but I did not see, and I did have a question, particularly because of that section where it says 101308C, reporting of minor incidents, and that section. And it states that any allied health professional involved in a minor incident need not be reported to the board unless the conduct indicates several circumstances, including number 4, the licensee has engaged in a pattern of repeated incidents that demonstrate the licensee's continued practice would pose a risk of harm to patients or others, end quote. How will the board determine that a person, that a pattern of a repeated, incident exists, of minor incidents, need not be reported? I mean, this is becoming a pattern. Why should not this be reported?
May I refer this to our legal counsel?
Okay, please, thank you. And please identify who you are and your name.
Hi, Senator. Rob Weinberg from the AG's office.
Can you just move the mic a little bit up further if you can?
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
There we go. Senator, I think, I don't know about what the index looks like or the table of contents there, but there should be a 101-307 immediately preceding the section that we're reading from, which is the mandatory compulsory reporting part. It's actually the existing law for the most part.
Okay.
It's currently required in the existing law for allied health professionals, medical physicians, and it's also in the nursing board's rules and regulations, which have recently been approved. So just the general concept of mandatory or compulsory reporting is, and what you see in there is already, for the most part of the law on that. But that's a good question about well, how do you know if it's a repetitive, pattern if you're not already reporting it? I think that this section here, the 101-308, is really meant as a guideline for people to understand. They don't have to do every single little irritation with a colleague that they might have. So it's more of a guideline in terms of you don't have to report everything, every single thing, but
if there was if this is a pattern going on, how does the board rely on making such determinations on an individual license?
Well, the board wouldn't be making that determination about whether there's a pattern. We're looking at, perhaps an employer would be looking at it and going, okay, we've had this issue with this employee repeatedly, and it's gone past it's not being corrected.
But it's not being reported, so how can you correct something if it's not being reported?
I'm sorry, I'm not
How it's not required to be reported, so how are you going to correct anything if it's not being reported?
Again, this is for the employer or the colleague to be looking at, as far as it's like, okay, here's something. I mean, I can't think of a good example right now, but we're talking about minor incidents. We're not talking about some sort of major malpractice issue, and bearing in mind that this is covering 16 different fields. So, I mean, if I could think of a great example of okay, that's minor, but you've done it 12 times, now it's become a pattern.
But you need to report it to know that it's come up to 12 times. If you don't report it, one incident or 2, 3, 4, 5, it has to be reported. Somehow it has to be in the record so that you can go back and say that this individual has repeatedly for the last 12 different times, caused a minor incident, but it's still, you know what I mean? So I just don't understand why you would take that out.
Different boards have, because of the general reporting requirements that we see for doctors, and in particular nurses that I've seen, we get, or the nursing board gets advised of every employment issue that comes up, like repeatedly being late or missing shifts or those kinds of issues. So when but then it's going to be in the employer's discretion as to whether these things add up to the point of 1 or 2 is understandable from an employment perspective, but 3 or 4 or 5, that's become a pattern that reflects on your ability to practice your profession.
It still didn't answer my question as why is it left out. I really think that something like this should be incorporated regardless. I mean, you're dealing with the health of individuals and everything should be accounted for. I know that there was an incident where somebody was repeatedly, being late or not showing up or MIA. Later on found out the person had a drug addiction. These are ways and patterns that you see in patterns as an indicator of something severely wrong and that the board should keep tabs on this at all times. So anyways, Hopefully the speaker will discuss more on this, but I think that's something that needs to be reported regardless, no matter how small it is. It's on 3. Yeah, it's on 3. Section is 101-308C. There was a testimony actually was submitted to the committee. I don't know if the speaker is going to bring this up, but some of the concerns that were brought up in this particular testimony is the issue in such cases as in a hospital or clinic, the patient may not know the name of a practitioner and cannot find it through reluctance of the facility to provide it or use HIPAA as an excuse. The patient may not be able to identify the licensee, but knows of a breach of the standard of care. This was a case in the commission. So, Mamie, what are you doing as far as to ensure that the identification of those who are going to get licensees, that their names, it's easy access for patients or anybody who wants to file a complaint to be able to know who that individual is without saying, no, we can't give you that information because of HIPAA? Or is there anything in here that provides that kind of ability for an individual filing a complaint with the board? Sure. Is it okay, Mamie? Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah, I'm familiar with that criticism. And there you had an issue of, you had a national organization, you had CMS who came to a hospital and did a report based on its searching through records in a couple of different cases. And their report was all anonymous. It said Dr. 1, Dr. 2, Nurse 1, Nurse 2, and that it didn't identify specifically. So you had 3 different boards there. You had the doctors, medical board, nursing board, and you had allied health, because I think there were some respiratory therapists involved. And the board's members it's board members that were the investigators, and they were at a loss at, the report doesn't tell me who the member is, who the professional is. How do we figure that out? And to me, that seemed like a pretty simple question. You just take the medical records and you line them up with the time, standards. But the board members, or the boards didn't have, an investigator who could make that kind of pretty simple, putting those things together. So when a complaint is filed and it's going to involve, professional abilities or negligence or that, you're going to get the records. So it's just a matter of kind of lining up the times in the medical records with whatever the outside allegation is. Does that make sense?
I see. So you'll find it that way.
Yeah, I don't think
it was easier.
It was unnecessarily difficult for the boards because they're health professionals. They're not investigators.
Okay, thank you. Maybe you said that in October 7th and 11th, and I believe 13th, you had these public hearings for these rules and regs. How many people attended in total those public hearings? This was an opportunity for people to make comment, the public to make comment on these rules and regs. Do you remember?
I did not calculate the number, but maybe perhaps I would say half a dozen, like maybe 6.
6 people showed
At
combined
least, but they're also Zooming, so we have to include the Zooming. It was indicated in the records when I presented who were going to testify and who were present, so that could be recorded. I would say, I think about half a dozen, 6, 7 people.
on
the
all
most is 8.
combined on all 3 nights. 6. No.
As I
Yeah, I don't know what the numbers tallied up to be, but there were records kept of, there were minutes of each of the 3 meetings and summaries, and And I think there were attendance logs as well.
Yeah, I was
So
just
you can
wondering
find
how many
them.
participated, and what did the board do to try to reach out to the public as well as, people in the field, to come out and testify, other doctors and physicians? I mean, what efforts did this board make when having this public hearing? I think, Ms. Cepeda, you wanted to say something?
I know for the people for three different disciplines, they were emailed for everyone, for each and every licensee was emailed with all the provided dates and times. And we made that so that if they're not able to make it this time, they're able to make it at 2 other times. And so I know I work with them. They've called me and I encouraged them. They wrote me and I said, please refer it to public health. So they were fully aware of what was happening. And if they had any concerns, we encouraged them again to put that in writing and to forward it to HPLO.
Well, that's good to know. I mean, at least in all the disciplines, there was an email sent to everyone, right?
The staff, yes, at
Yeah.
HPLO, they email every single licensees
Okay.
the dates of the public hearing and what it is about, and
Okay.
encourage them to support. But individuals appear for the 3 nights, I can say is probably less than 10, my estimation. But they did submit writings, and we have compiled the writings, and they were also recorded. The public hearing was recorded according to Open Government Act. And our legal counsel also have written records of individuals attended, and he responded to all of them that submitted issues in writing.
That's good to hear. You did your due diligence in order to reach out to not only just the licensees, but the public as well. It's important. Last question is,
Can I,
how-
can I also add something? That we
Yes.
did also have a number of participants through the Zoom process as well, in addition to in-person attendance.
yeah, that's
So-
good to hear. Zoom is, it seems, since we had Zoom, we have more participation, with Zoom. I bet you 10 to 1 if this was on Zoom, we'd probably have more senators up here too right now, but anyways, at least you got more Republicans up here. So anyways, how many times throughout, with the board making these changes on rules and regulations, are you supposed to do this on every 3 years, every 4 years, or how many times, or how many years before you do make any changes? Is there
well-
something in writing that says that you have to visit this every 3 years?
Well, as I understand, the Allied Health Practice Act, enacted in 1999, it says the board promulgate rules and regulations, but that has not been done until now.
Wow.
So you're talking about rules has not been worked on since 1999, and of course, as I indicated in my testimony, it's been, only we've been working, actually, the group here, the board, have been working on it for the last, what did I say, 8 years? 7? 6 years. Feel like forever. Because
Yeah.
we meet quite a bit. The work group meet quite often, sometimes twice a week, and I think 4 times a month. So I really like to, commend my fellow board members, because it is their effort and dedication as well to be able to come together and meet and finally, work on the rules and settle. So it's a big challenge.
Yes,
so-
a very big challenge, since it was supposed to be done in 1999, and it's taken this long. I just think that we should have something also in play, that these rules and regulations should be visited every 4 years or every 3 years, and not have to wait so long to do so. As we move forward, maybe we can do something in the legislation that it requires that review process. So I appreciate all your hard work and your time this evening. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Blas?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to the panel that's here, and to everybody else that's here, thank you very much for being here. It's a long road. I remember Sybil, you and I had this conversation back in 2006, 2007, maybe at the same time. I think that one time, I know that what stymied us is I had a big problem with a cosmetologist telling a chiropractor what to do. Okay, but I appreciate that. You know, we're here with this. You know, maybe I'm so interested in. I did read the whole document. Okay, and you know, as it was stated, it was a long time coming. Okay, I'm here to support your efforts. I'm here to listen to all of you, but I think I'm pretty much convinced, through reading this document, that you know it's a start. It's a start, and it's final now. But as you know, my colleague Senator Tiger said, it's final until we need to improve it again. Okay, so I just want to again commend you all. Thank you very much for all the hard work. I know there's a lot of work that went into this. I submitted testimony to your, as part of your hearings. I'm part of the package, I guess, with regard to this. You know, I look forward to, again, here listening to more of the discussion and seeing how we can help you out. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Blas. Senator Brown?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good evening to all of you. Thank you for coming here. I know it's been a long day. I just wanted to follow up on your comment as a chair in terms of the fees that are going to be charged. You mentioned that the amount was $64,000 or so, that might not be an adequate amount to properly staff the board. And I know in previous hearings we had discussions about the concern about, you know, timeliness of any type of complaints coming forth. And certainly the fact also that board members are essentially tasked to actually do the work of investigating. What is your recommendation to address that so that you actually have resources to do these investigations, so anyone in the community that feels they have a concern that's being raised, it's going to be done in a timely fashion and the resources are going to be there to properly address it, whichever way or whatever the ultimate outcome of the decision is, that there's a means to properly address that? Because otherwise I still see that as an inadequacy in this process, right, if we don't address the staffing capacity.
Please proceed.
It would be really nice if the money could be appropriated to public health to cover those things, to cover the board.
It's always nice. I hope so, and I hope we continue to have money. This legislature likes to appropriate to all kinds of things. You're not on that list so far, but we're certainly open to that discussion. I mean, I think public confidence is important. And also for those of you in your profession, I mean, especially if a complaint is made, I would want to make sure if I was in your profession that there was a process in place, that those issues can be addressed in a timely manner, because the implication could be substantial. I mean, and not in a very positive way, and yet we just know that that's an inadequacy that needs to be addressed. So either way, either through the fee process or if the legislature is looking, you know, at what I see in the next few years, even though the election's over, the curtains will come down and we'll really see how much money's in the bank, so to speak, in terms of what's left. But do you have, as a chair, any additional feedback or any other member here on how that can be properly addressed? Because I still see that even if we were to pass this and update these rules and regulations, if the process is not in place and the resources or personnel is not there to facilitate, I think we're going to be back to where we were, where we started, and I think we want to progress from that.
Thank you, Senator, for bringing the issue concerning fee. I know every time that fees are raised, you know, people are going to make comments about it, oh, it's too expensive and all that. But I think basically the fee payer doesn't really look at what the fee is for. And the products and the outcome of it. So the proposed fees is something that barely meeting the needs of this board. Again, like I said, that we are only providing a portion of funding required for the legal counsel, procure attorneys, investigators, and inspectors. Currently there are rules that the clinics of chiropractor and acupuncture are supposed to be inspected in conjunction with cooperation with the public health inspectors, but that has not been done as far as I know. Have you been inspected? Never. So we need to inspect those. That's what inspectors are for. Now, the investigators, as you know, is to investigate cases that are of merit and to protect the public so that the board can be intelligently deliberate on and process what the complaint's about. So I don't know what else to say. I know that appropriation by the legislature to this office is another option, but as a consumer, I mean, I'm also paying the fees as well. I find it necessary. The amount that we're looking at is perhaps you stay home and have dinner instead of going out with your family to one dinner. That's what it costs. I mean, nowadays it's like several hundred if you bring out a family of 4 to a nice restaurant. Fees are up, everything is up. It's just that I think people need to know what it's worth. If you want the board to be able to be helpful to complainants and do the job and to provide and to protect the public, then it costs money. Everything costs money. Money talks, right? So it is really up to legislature thinking the worthiness of the boards, you know, to protect the public. And that's basically what it is. I do not blame the licensees as the fees are too high, but at this point, we have not raised the fee since 1999. And I think that with this amount, to me, it's reasonable since we already examined the other states, what they're doing, what kind of fees they're collecting. And remember, the states, they have their own office to run regulatory boards. They have an executive director. They have staff to run the boards. But on Guam, we're falling under the Health Professional Licensing Office. In fact, maybe let me propose that maybe they should be independent, just like the Election Commission. But I don't think that's feasible at this time because of the amount of money appropriated to this office and the amount of fees that we collected. We cannot get in anywhere near an independent examiner's office. That might be the potential. That might be a wish in the future. So I think the proposed fees are reasonable after we study, examine, and mull over it to support this office.
Public confidence obviously is very important. I think to be able to acquire that and that, you know, if anyone does complain, they know that there's process in place. They know that their case is being reviewed in a timely manner. I think it's difficult, certainly for you as board members, regardless of your respective positions, to have to become investigators and go out and do that work. I think that's probably part of the problem and part of the delay. I think it's having a professional staff that can provide that. And then, of course, you guys collectively as a board can properly review the information, determine how to proceed. I think ultimately that's how we have to look at this, either through the fees or the legislature provides a appropriation or a combination of both, because I think it's critical. I think it's important for the community, and it's also important for all of you in your respective professions, especially if an allegation is made. You know, if I were in that position, I would want it to be resolved, especially if I felt I was innocent, I didn't do anything wrong. You know, there's human tendency to want to believe the worst. You know, someone says something and, oh, okay, that must be true. And now we got social media to spread all the wonderful things as well. And that can be a very disadvantage to someone who's spent many years, you know, studying and working in your profession and wanting to do a good job. And then those issues are left hanging. And if they're left hanging for months or years, I mean, there's no benefit for either side, the community or the individual or individuals in those respective professions in which a complaint may have been made. So I certainly appreciate you coming in and providing testimony as we look at this issue, but I think this particular concern with regards to the staffing capacity is something that still needs to be addressed. But thank you for providing your input. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brown. So in answer to one of the earlier questions, my staff went through the records. So all of the minutes and documents from your public hearings were sent to us as well. and are provided in the shared Google Drive that we've given access to all the senators. And of course, all the documents you provided to us are also transmitted, so they're in our messages and communications as well. So in all 3 days of your public hearings, there was a total of 19 that testified, not including those on Zoom. So there's more than you thought. And yes, and I want to congratulate this board as well before I allow you we replace you with another panel. But because, yeah, this is the first board. We had an oversight, or several oversights of these different licensing boards, health licensing boards. There are different issues. But every board needed to update its rules and regulations. So this is the first. And that's why we are pushing this, despite it being the end of the term, because this is monumental in my eyes and really significant work. And I want to do our part on top of your work to make sure that this can come to fruition and be implemented. I know that you've been working on it for very long. And this is in response to all of us trying to seek, more accountability from the boards and make them more efficient so that you in turn can account to your licensees more efficiently. We, at those oversights, did an accounting of each board's fees that they were bringing in and the expenses, and learned at that time that some boards had no fees at all in place yet, so they have to establish those. So some of you were carrying the burden of others, perhaps, and we're trying to address that as well. So we're looking for every single licensing board, health licensing board, to bring in their updated rules and regs, or to go through that process and to get them updated, as well as fees, right? And you're right that these fees, some of it go towards shared attorneys, shared prosecuting attorneys, they call it. Some of them are the hearings officers that they're now hiring. And this has evolved, right? And but at the time, there was enough money. There was not a board that was short, and the RFPs had actually gone out. So they were able to hire these attorneys. I think that the procurement was delayed, but it was actually not the money was there. They were able to do this. At one point, the Attorney General was, well, according to my reading of the law, the Attorney General is supposed to provide hearings officers, but that did not come through, so we are hiring, or the boards are hiring hearings officers. And on top of all of that, this year, the HPLO board, we appropriate to the Department of Public Health HPLO office, right? That's how it's done. And so some of the revolving fees are appropriated, and on top of that, we appropriated $280,000 additionally this year to make sure that they have in place those lawyers and investigators that were needed. And the theory was that the boards were going to share investigators, and we were going to see. This is the first time that this is happening in decades, because the boards had done all their investigation themselves. And I think that stemmed from, doctors and other professionals saying they are the best judge of their own practice, right? And so that's why we have every profession represented on this board, so that people in that particular practice will be available and be the judge of whether something is done right or wrong, or what the requirements should be. I think that's how investigators evolved. That, for example, the pharmacy board still does all its investigations, and the different boards have done that. And evolving that beyond is up to you. So I welcome that. All right, and again, so I think this is great progress, and it's moving us towards more open accountability for all of the boards and for each of your professions. So we're going to hear from the rest of the people here who've signed up to testify as well. If I could ask you, Dr. Terlaje, the chair, and council, and anyone who wants to stay, you're welcome to stay. But thank you again very much for being here and for your work on the board to get these rules and regulations and the changes in statute to us. Thank you so much. We'll next call on Keith Horonucci, Aaron Perez, Ian Twaddle, Dr. Twaddle, Professor Twaddle, Cameron Meno, Barbara Gregory, and Lonnie Larkin, and Steve Arthur. All right, so some of you have signed in, but you did not indicate that you wanted to provide verbal or oral testimony. And if I didn't call your name and you would like to, then please, please come up to the table. All right. Okay, so let's begin with the first one was Horinucci, Dr. Horinucci. Please state your name for the record and please proceed.
My name is Dr. Keith Horinucci. I'm a licensed nutritionist, and I have my own private practice, Dr. Horinucci Wellness Clinic. Madam Chair and committee members, thank you for allowing me to give support of this bill. Since we're talking about fees, I would also like to say I'm willing to increase the fees that I pay. So you have my support with the increase of fees. I have no problems with that. I'm just going to go ahead and read the testimony that I have submitted. As a nutritionist since 1982 and a licensed nutritionist on Guam since 2001, I support the legislation to allow nutritionists and dietitians, amongst other licensed professionals, to order laboratory tests. Over the past 40 years of my career in nutrition and functional medicine, I have been ordering laboratory tests only with the support of other medical doctors, usually working in the same organization. But since 2012, I opened my own private clinic providing nutritional services to the people of Guam. So during the last 11 years, I had faced some challenges with ordering laboratory tests because my license here in Guam did not allow me to do so. Ordering laboratory tests that are related to nutrition services provide, without question, valuable objective data benefiting the patient's outcome and health. I have observed how increasingly more important laboratory data is necessary to provide safe and effective care for my patients with metabolic diseases on Guam, including diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, cancer, obesity, allergies, immune dysregulation, and much more. I would also like to comment on and support the provision of prescriptive writing for clinical psychologists, since my undergraduate degree is in psychology. As a clinician, I have seen an increased incidence of behavioral health problems in our population, and giving the trained clinical psychologists the additional tools for treatment would be, in my opinion, highly beneficial. Now, in the year 2022, I'm glad to see this law amended for the allied health professionals, including the ordering of laboratory tests. I support this legislation, Bill number 356-39. And I'd like to thank all who have put significant amounts of effort into writing this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Horinucci. Aaron Perez. All right. Professor Twaddle.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, Senator Blas, Senator Brown, and Senator Taitukui. My name is Ian Twaddle. I'm a professor of clinical psychology and Micronesian studies at the University of Guam, where I've been since 1994. I'm also a licensed clinical psychologist in Guam, and I'm currently the president of the Guam Psychological Association, but I'm here primarily today in my role as a professor at the university. I'm here to speak in support of Bill 356-36, but just on a specific portion of it. We're just here to talk about the licensed psychology associate license. In 2008, the University of Guam created a Master of Science in Clinical Psychology program to help to address the tremendous shortage of qualified mental health professionals in our island community. And for years before then, Guam repeatedly was bringing in psychologists from the mainland who often provided services for a few months, or sometimes some would come for a few years, but then they'd move on and leave us to find other psychologists in a kind of a never-ending cycle. And UOG's Master of Science in Clinical Psychology, also known as the MSCP program, was designed to solve this problem by training highly qualified mental health professionals right here at home in Guam. UOG's MSCP program provides Guam and our region with a steady stream of highly trained, culturally competent master's level mental health professionals to address the mental health needs of our community's children and our adolescents, adults, and families. MSCP provides intensive training in clinical psychology research and assessment and psychodiagnosis, and most importantly, a wide range of evidence-based clinical interventions addressing the treatment and prevention of mental disorders and other serious mental health concerns, including things like trauma and self-harm and suicidal behavior. So with 52 plus credit hours and 1,000 clinical training hours taught and supervised by clinical psychologists and other mental health professionals, our students are ideally suited to provide mental health treatment to our island's children, adolescents, adults, and families struggling with mental health concerns. However, most of the master's level mental health provider positions in the government of Guam are titled psychiatric social worker, and our clinical psychology graduates are not eligible for these positions because they don't have a degree in social work. So in short, since 2008, the government of Guam has been investing in the development of our island's mental health workforce, in part through UOG's MSCP program, but we have not been matching this investment with the creation of jobs for graduates of this program. I see this as a significant missed opportunity for our island. So the creation of a licensed psychology associate position, as outlined in Bill 356-36, is an important step to resolving this problem and helping us to meet our island's mental health needs. Now, this afternoon I submitted a letter in support of the bill to Speaker Terlaje's email address. And to conclude my testimony, I'd just like to read a portion of that letter. The letter reads as follows. The faculty of the University of Guam's Master of Science in Clinical Psychology program would like to express their full support for Bill 356-36. We would especially like to highlight the licensed psychology associate position included in the bill, which will allow persons with a master's degree in clinical psychology or related field to provide psychological services under the supervision of a licensed clinical psychologist or licensed psychiatrist. This new license will significantly increase opportunities for graduates of the University of Guam's Master of Science in Clinical Psychology program or similar master's degree programs at other U.S. accredited or foreign equivalent universities to obtain employment in the mental health and social services field and thereby contribute to addressing our island's mental health needs. And then in the letter, we just requested one very minor change, and this is under the rules governing specific professions. It states that when getting their 1,000 clinical training hours, the students should be supervised by a licensed clinical psychologist, licensed psychiatrist, licensed mental health counselor, or marriage and family therapist, and we just wanted to add in or other licensed mental health professional, including licensed professional counselors. And that's simply because most of the master's level mental health professionals are licensed as LPCs, and as a result, most of our students are trained under LPCs. If LPCs were not included as potential supervisors for our student trainees, I would probably say almost all of our students would not be eligible for this new license once it's created, because most of them have had at least some of their clinical training hours supervised by an LPC. But I just wanted to clarify, we're not requesting that LPCs or other master's level licensed professionals be the supervisor overseeing graduates with working as a licensed psychology associate. Once they graduate and they're working in the field as a licensed psychology associate, as this bill suggests, they should be under a licensed clinical psychologist or psychiatrist. It's just during their clinical training while they're in our program, we send them out for 100 hours of child therapy training, 100 hours of family therapy training, 100 hours of cognitive behavioral training, 100 hours of humanistic training, and 600 hours of internship. And some of those hours in training are supervised by LPCs, and it would be helpful if they could be included. And we put the wording in as a suggestion. That was our only recommendation for revision. Otherwise, we'd like to thank you all for the opportunity to provide testimony on this bill. And I'd just also like to say that I'm speaking on behalf of my colleagues in clinical psychology, Professor Cameron Meno, Dr. Rita Sharma, and Dr. Marshali Bacchiano. And also just to be clear that we're here as psychology faculty and not representing the official position of the University of Guam in any way. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much, Professor Tuato, and all of those who you spoke on behalf of. All right, I have Cameron Meno. Is that Professor?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you. Hafa Day, my name is Cameron Meno. Hafa Day, Madam Speaker, Terlaje, Senator Frank Blas Jr., Senator Joanne Brown, and Senator Taitagui. Hafa Day to the members of the Guam Allied Health Board and members of the general public. I'm here to speak today as an instructor of psychology at the University of Guam and co-chair of the Masters of Science in Clinical Psychology program. I'm also here to speak as well as a proud alumna of both UOG's Psychology Bachelor's Degree program, as well as the second cohort of UOG's Master of Science in Clinical Psychology program. When I graduated with my master's degree from UOG, I was accepted into my current PhD program in clinical and community psychology and have recently been hired back at my alma mater at UOG as a full-time faculty member while I complete my doctoral dissertation. These experiences put me in a uniquely qualified position to speak to the quality of our master's program at UOG and the necessity of this new license, the Licensed Psychology Associate, to support our graduates in serving the mental health needs of our island community. UOG's Master of Science in Clinical Psychology program is like no other. We offer coursework in 4 clinical psychotherapy approaches, including cognitive behavioral therapy, existential humanistic therapy, child and adolescent therapy, and family therapy, as well as coursework in ethics, research, assessment, and regionally relevant courses that explore historical and current research on mental health in Micronesia. The training in our MSCP program enables our students to support our island's mental health and wellness and provide treatment for substance use, trauma, and serious mental health issues such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and other mental health concerns. Our coursework has prepared a number of students like myself to pursue doctoral studies, including a graduate of our first cohort who obtained her PhD in clinical psychology and is now a licensed clinical psychologist with Guam's Department of Veteran Affairs, where she works to support our local vets. Several other graduates of our program are currently off-island pursuing doctoral studies and are eager to return home upon completion of their doctoral degrees to serve our community. Our program has also prepared MSCP graduates to work in our local community, helping to address our island's mental health and social problems. a graduate of our second cohort, currently works as the program manager of Healing Hearts Crisis Center, an important community agency that supports local survivors of sexual violence and other forms of domestic and interpartner violence on island. In fact, many of our graduates are now working in both public agencies and private practice clinics to better serve our community. The new license of Licensed Psychology Associate will pave the way for our graduates to immediately start serving the community under the supervision of a licensed clinical psychologist or psychiatrist while our graduates work on accruing 3,000 hours of supervised clinical work needed for an independent license of licensed mental health counselor or marriage and family therapist, which is equivalent to about approximately 2 years of full-time work. We see this license as being mutually beneficial to our graduates as well as to our broader community, who along with other parts of the world have seen elevated rates of suicide, substance use, sexual violence, and trauma, and would benefit from the care of qualified mental health professionals. We're grateful for your thoughtful consideration of this new license and ask for your support in making it Guam law. Sizuas Masi.
Sizuos Masi. All right, I think next we have, Barbara Gregory. Wait, hold on. Yeah, press the button there, it'll turn on. Thank you. State your name for the record, please.
Hafaday, Madam Speaker Terlaje, Senator Frank Blas, Senator Joanne Brown, and Senator Terlaje. My name is Dr. Barbara Anadera Gregory. I was raised on Guam. I left for college with a vision of returning to the island and serving the people of Guam by helping to improve the health and wellness of our people. Chiropractic is the largest holistic healthcare profession in the United States, and in all 50 states, chiropractors can order labs, especially to help with the nutritional status of the patient. I would like to ensure that chiropractors continue to have access to ordering labs, and I do support this addition into our scope of practice in section 10304. I also agree with the physical therapist educational stipulations for dry needling and would like to see the same stipulations for chiropractic. I recommend that an additional section be added to section 10304 and dry needling be added in the definition of chiropractic. The majority of the states allow it at this time. Also, I strongly feel that naturopathy should be a licensed profession following the United States educational stipulations for licensure in order to protect the people we care about, the people of Guam. I do appreciate all the work the board has done to get this updated, and I appreciate the time and your consideration. Sizuos Masi.
I'm sorry, Dr. Gregory, could you just repeat the things you're asking at the end that be added? When was...
Okay. The stipulations for, well, I do agree with the nutrition. The stipulations, I recommend that an additional section be added to 10304 and dry needling be added in the definition of chiropractic, and the definition of the scope of chiropractic. The majority of the states allow it at this time. Also, the third thing that I recommend is that naturopathy be a licensed profession following the United States educational stipulations for licensure. And that's in order to protect the people of Guam, the people we care about.
Thank you very much. Lonnie Larkin.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Lonnie Larkin. Madam Speaker, Senators, thank you for your time. Also, I thank you to the board who have spent so much time in putting this bill together. I too appreciate is a strong word, but I understand the increase of fees, and it has been 20-some years since it's been increased, and I am in support of that. My name, again, is Dr. Lonnie Larkin. I've been practicing and licensed chiropractor on Guam for over 25 years, and my requests are simple, actually following those of Dr. Gregory, And I wrote simply, in reviewing the current bill being discussed, please consider section 104.12 that addresses the scope of physical therapy, and I do am in support of that, but it is also my recommendation and humble request that an identical section be added to the section 103.04, which defines the chiropractic scope, by adding dry needling to that scope, as it is, as Dr. Gregory said, allowed for in the large majority of the states with proper training, and it should be an added tool for chiropractic to help our patients on Guam as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Larkin. Steve Arthur. Yes, please, Dr. Gregory.
I also support the raising of the fees. It has been, I mean, we've been paying the same fees since
98.
1998, yes.
All right. Thank you,
So I
Dr.
do
Gregory.
support that.
Steve Arthur.
Good evening, Madam Speaker and distinguished senators. My name is Dr. Steve Arthur. I've been a licensed chiropractor for 28 years, and for 15 years I've been practicing on Guam. I specifically want to address section 10304 that states chiropractors have the right to order labs. I'm in full support of that. As I think my colleague mentioned, all 50 states in the U.S. allow chiropractors to order labs. In fact, the current trend in the U.S., there's now 27 states that allow patients direct access to labs with no doctor referral. So I think being in line with the U.S. and guaranteeing the right of chiropractors to order labs, in my opinion, is very reasonable. I also support adding to the scope of chiropractic the ability to do dry needling with the same requirements as a physical therapist have for the additional training.
Thank you very much, Dr. Arthur. All right. Is there anyone else who wanted to submit testimony who I haven't called? All right, then I'm going to ask you some questions, if that's okay. First of all, if I could ask Attorney Weinberg, is there, I thought I saw it, but I can't find it right away, a dry needling authority granted in this bill to another profession?
Yeah, this.
Could you just point us to where?
Oh, the dry needling kind of came up at the last minute. It kind of hit us like a tidal wave on the first hearing, and then subsequently in the second two, we were kind of deluged with lots of comments and literature from the physical therapy world about it. And then from that, I was able to kind of patch together some stuff, and I think it was from Illinois and from Arizona for the statute part and the rule part on dry needling and the prerequisites, minimum education, and training qualifications, things. We didn't hear from the chiropractors. I mean, there was like one or two mentions of it during the hearings, and I didn't get any literature to kind of look at. I think it's doable to do what's being asked here, kind of add a section. I just need to look at, like what might be the best way to do it. It's in there for physical therapy.
Physical therapies. Okay,
Yes.
so I see it on section 35 of the bill, page 26. It's an addition to the current statute authorizing dry needling as provided in this act and by board rules and regulations. And then another section, section 36 on page 27. It's a whole new section which defines dry needling.
Yes, that's the whole kind of the section, and I think that I added in some rules as well for
Okay. All right, and I appreciate the work you did on this from scratch to put that together. All right, so what did you say your recommendation was, or that? Did you say something about that?
Oh, I didn't have one. I just was saying that I don't think it would be difficult to add a similar section for chiropractic.
All right.
I just hadn't seen any literature at the time.
All right. Is there any reason not to add them that I should be aware of?
I would just want to do my due diligence and see the same kind of literature or the same kind of like something that pointed to a similar survey of states that had it for chiropractic as well.
Yes.
Otherwise, no.
All right. Thank you. Are you aware of any of the different states? I know you said all of the states are allowing chiropractors the lab authority, but what about the dry needling?
I think there are 32 states at this time. I'm just sorry, I can't remember there. I can look it up in a minute.
All right, if you could provide that, I'd like to take a
Okay.
look. I'll try to find it myself, but thank you. And so Dr. Trotto, thank you for your testimony, and Professor Meno. We did speak about this, I know, maybe a year or so ago, about how the jobs have to line up with the professions that we're trying to encourage. And so we did make some shifts years ago in the government, and so we did successfully implement social worker jobs where they were needed. However, I have had this discussion with the Guam Behavioral Health at one point also, maybe a couple years ago as well. And I thought that was going to be worked out on that side, kind of like administratively, they would add those positions or change their job descriptions so that they could fill those as well with graduates in the psychology department. All right, and so we will definitely continue to work on that and that side. And I know Dr. Balahaja is committed to as well reviewing the job descriptions and seeing where we can make some suggestions if necessary. But I agree, I agree with both of you, an area we definitely need. There's no lack of evidence of that we need these to be filled. We need these types of professions to be encouraged and grown on Guam. So if this is going to do that, I'm for that. So thank you very much, and thank you for your testimony. And thank you to all of you for your testimony, and so it gives me a lot more confidence to know that you from the different professions are in support of the particular in your profession and also the fees as well. Thank you for that. So, So Senator Taitui, do you have any questions?
I just wanted to touch back on dry needling. It's very similar to acupuncture. And I was just wondering, why it was not included for chiropractors. I mean, it's something used for acupuncture. Dr. Miller, I know you're sitting on the board. You want to come up and answer our question? Because, like I said, Senator Brown and I were looking, okay, what does dry needling look like? And it's similar to acupuncture. So why would chiropractors, do the same type of work?
There is a lot of overlap in what we call the three hands-on professions: acupuncture, chiropractic, and physical therapy. And dry needling is not new, but it's getting more and more popular. It's getting more and more controlled. So chiropractors have been doing it for many years in a number of states. The reason it wasn't brought up at the hearing is, unfortunately, no chiropractor showed up at the hearing to speak about it. So that's why we're testifying for it now. It's kind of at the last minute. But it's another modality, but because it's very similar to acupuncture, and because you do penetrate the skin with needles, it needs to be more controlled as far as the educational standards for certification. Because there's many, many modalities in the hands-on professions, the physical therapy modalities, lasers, everything, but those don't penetrate the skin. This one does, so it takes a little bit more control to make sure everybody knows what they're doing.
So there's like training and going to school and being certified in this type of work, and then being able to utilize it here on Guam would have to be incorporated in the rules and regs, at least to oversee it and govern it?
That's correct. In the training that Assistant Attorney General Weinberg put into physical therapy, it's only logical that it should be identical for chiropractors. You don't want two levels of training. And that's not easy. I mean, if you want to do dry needling, it's going to take you, my guess would be probably 2 years to get certified. So it's not something where you go out and buy a bunch of needles and just start doing it yourself. You would have to be certified.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. That's all the question I have. I appreciate everyone being here tonight with this, and hope you're not too hungry right now. But thank you.
Thank you, Senator Taitagui. So yeah, again, so dry needling is defined on page 27 of the bill, section 36, and it lists for physical therapists here, and there's a line that says, dry needling does not include the teaching or application of acupuncture described by stimulation of auricular points, utilization of distal points or non-local points, needle retention, application of retained electric stimulation leads or other acupuncture theory. All right. Senator Blas, any questions for the panel?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Dr. Miller. Yeah, I can attest that he doesn't use dry needling on me, so, okay? I just dread the day that I come into the office and you pull out the needles and you're going to put them.
Maybe I could use you as a training model.
Oh, thank you. I thought I've been the training model the last few years with you. Anyways, I'm very much interested, and I thank you very much for the testimony that you had. And it does come as a surprise. Well, you know, not necessarily surprise. About how the mischaracterization of what you do and what behavioral health would prefer in there. So, what are currently the position? What is the title of the position that's at behavioral health right now?
So for the professionals who provide counseling at Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center, my understanding is that a lot of the positions for people with a master's degree, the title is Psychiatric Social Worker 1 and Psychiatric Social Worker 2. Dr. Balahaja might correct me on that, but that's my understanding of it.
Yes, the titles of Psychiatric Social Worker 1, 2, 3, and Supervisor, they're from the old, existing for years since the creation of the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse in 1983. I think as time passed, we need to update the titles and position that fits the practice and the community. And I'm biased, being a clinical psychologist. I think the associate is something that is necessary to serve this community, especially we have individuals going to the program, so I am advocating that that's going to be so. But given the limited number of individuals who are licensed in the area, I think to add the situation, adding the licensed professional counselor seems with some years of experience, not just brand new, I got licensed today and I'm going to supervise you tomorrow. That's not what it is. With some years of experience of providing supervision, should be able to provide the supervision necessary for these individuals in that title to gain their hours. And their experience in institution like clinic, at behavioral health, at the hospital, at the private clinics. So I think that is necessary to produce our individuals who wants to be clinical psychologists or other psychologists in the future. And I really like to see that we promote our own people with the necessary support and the title for them to be hired, employed in the system, so that in the future they remain and continue the service to the people.
Appreciate it. So that said, what would you suggest the title be, other than, because I have a problem with the social worker part.
Right. So it's interesting. Several of our graduates are working in those psychiatric social worker positions. They used
and
to.
Please, not take away from the social workers.
Not at all.
They have an important role, but I can see where there
important.
needs to be that separation.
Hugely important, and they also have the right to protect the title
Right.
social worker. That those positions are for people with a social work degree. So I don't have any issue with that. But our students are well trained to provide psychotherapy and other mental health services, and it's difficult for them to find that role in some government agencies because the position titles don't exist. So the title in this bill is licensed psychology associate, and it's designed that the graduate with a master's in clinical psych or related field could have that title. and then could provide mental health services, but under the supervision of a licensed psychologist or psychiatrist.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
Let me add this. I just came from a meeting of all the regulatory boards of the psychologists. Guam is really ahead in this title because I found out that only one other state uses this particular title of psychology associate. So I like to push it and see that that's happened. The reason why individuals graduate with psychology program or counseling at UOG cannot go into the Government of Guam system is because the title of social worker is only for social work. So if I'm a graduate of the clinical psych program at UOG, I won't be qualified in that position because I don't have a degree in bachelor's in social work or MSW master's. So this is really going to be fostering and promoting our own people to encourage them in the field who are trained in the field. Once this is happening, then we're hoping that clinics and hospitals and mental health system will open up positions in the Government of Guam systems to be able to hire these individuals in that particular title in which they qualify for.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And again, thank you once again for the testimony today. I learned a lot about what Dr. Miller does to my body when I go to him. Thank you very much. Okay. And thank you very much, too. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to follow up on a comment that was made earlier with regards to inspections and the lack thereof. Because at the same time, I'm sure we want to ensure those that are professional and certified are free to do the work that they do. But in the event, I want to put up my shingle and say, I'm providing this service, but I may not be legit. Who is doing the inspections or who's not doing the inspections that we need to make sure that, again, also for your legitimate business, you want to make sure that you're protected as well and there's not somebody else out there who's marring the profession by practicing and maybe they don't have the proper credentials and they're not operating properly. How are you addressing that?
The way to address it is increase the fees, have more appropriation from the legislature, and hire inspector for the purpose. Because the law right now stated that the clinics on acupuncture and chiropractor are supposed to be inspected. They're inspected probably by public health, environmental health, I don't know. But it's never happened. It's because we don't have the resource. We don't have inspector. So I think that inspectors should be hired full-time, as well as not only inspector, but also investigator, right? Full-time at HPLO so that they can do that duty for all the boards, not just health. I don't mean, our proposal doesn't mean that it's only health professional, only allied health professions. It means that the whole office covering should be able to go out. According to the law, periodically, I don't know how often, they should be inspected, not only for cleanliness, but that make sure that they are complying, following the law. For one example is that, your license should be hanged up according to and conspicuously on your wall. I don't know how many are doing that because when patients and clients come to visit you, they need to see that you are licensed. So I want to make an emphasis that when visitors come, they might not know that they're licensed just because you put up, the wall that says, a sign that says, I'm doing this and this. And right now we're looking into organization that set up shop and then doing that without license. Why do we have license? The license is to protect the public. The individuals are complying with the law to protect the public. So if people doesn't know, the public doesn't know generally, they go to a place and say, oh, they advertise, based on advertisement, they track people, then the tendency they go there, and if they are being injured and they are not licensed, then you need legal remedy, and it cannot be reported to board because they're not under the jurisdiction of the board. So the only way is for the legal to come up with cease and desist or whatever other means, illegal means to, to make them accountable. But individuals who are licensed, the board has jurisdiction over, but individuals not. Therefore, the public needs to really be educated that they need to go to licensed individuals in the area that they would like to see, such as chiropractor, such as acupuncture. But right now, we don't know how many outfit is being set up on Guam to provide services to people who are not licensed. They profess that they are licensed, maybe, who knows. But the licensed individuals who have clinics set up, office, they're supposed to have the license set up that says they are duly licensed. The public doesn't know. They can go there and say, well, show me your license, right? Another one that I was thinking while we're going through all this is that perhaps the Office of Business License Office under revenue tax, they may ask, okay, you applying for a license to open up a shop of, let's say, a chiropractor. Let me see your license. Are you licensed? And if they're not licensed, they should not be granted a business license. That just is my own personal thinking right now, right? To be able to be double-check that aspect of make sure people are duly qualified to provide the service. But I know for a fact that maybe out there, they just set up shop and that says, like massage therapy. This is an old problem. Massage therapy is an old issue that has not been dealt with by the legislature or by any of the, well, actually many bills that came out, but they never went anywhere. And I count my fingers who are the individuals tried, but they never become they're not licensed. But massage therapy is a big problem right now. I went to a massage and on my foot, and it created a bone spur for my foot. Do I ever want to go back to that massage place again? No. So there are purpose of how the legislature in the beginning initially come up with licensing professions. And we're coming up before you today to letting you know that that this is good business to license people and to make sure people are following the rules and make sure they're qualified and to protect the public. I mean, this is just another talking, my selling point, but I think I think there are more things to be scrutinized in the community of services provided to the public, and particularly the public doesn't know, and they just think that because it's good advertisement and enticing you to go there, you go there. And then later on, God forbid that if you're injured and crack your back, that who are not licensed. So Dr. Miller going to look into those things. But I'm just saying that it's good business to regulate people with the right credentials and the right, so the legislature should think about massage therapy again.
Do you have a list of your licensed members that's published anywhere or online so members of the public can go online and verify who is licensed by the board?
If you look up Health Professional License Office, there's a list of individuals who are licensed right now as required. But the public still don't know. They look up, okay, chiropractor, okay, Dr. Miller's license, great, I'll go to him. Or Dr. Gregory, I'll go to him, But in general, if they don't think license is required, they might not know. They might just, see on Facebook or Twitter that, oh, these people are available, which is what happened right now, that many of the establishment put themselves on that. That's how come we're able to look at that these people are putting up shops, but they're not licensed.
Well, obviously, it's something that needs to be looked into. It's a little concerning that there have not been inspections because, you know, even just with public health on restaurants, I mean, they go, wow, we're lucky if we get around every 2 to 3 years, and you're like, it's something, obviously, that's a concern where we interface with the public, but I appreciate your testimony. It's enlightening. I don't have an issue at all with the lining up the degree at the university with the employment positioning, because obviously there's a tremendous need, especially with our growing drug problem on Guam. And I mean, we want to see those needs filled, so I mean, that I'm certainly supportive of, but definitely brings to light the need, and perhaps next time we see public health, those would be the questions we can ask them with regards to inspections that are occurring out there and how often, how frequent. Because obviously, you know, from your input this evening, it certainly brought the issue to light that there's a need to address that. So thank you very much for your input. Thank you for your testimony. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to ask these questions.
Thank you, Senator Brown. All right, so I think I've called everyone who wanted to provide testimony. And I want to recognize the students who are here today. Thank you for attending and participating in this process as well, especially if it's your livelihood that we're discussing here today, or your future livelihoods. And of course, I want to thank all of you on the panel for the information. For those proposing dry needling be extended to chiropractics, if you could look on page 27 of the bill as the description of dry needling there, and submit to me any other, I don't know, what you think about that provision, in particular if you think that's applicable for your profession or not. And of course, we'll look at the other states, what they're doing in this regard, and then we will proceed. And so I want to thank all of you. Yes, Dr. Terlaje, you may close.
Speaker, could you give a deadline for individuals that wish to submit to help? Because
That's
it could
a very
be
good idea, because I am trying to move this bill. Tomorrow's
Yes.
our Committee on Rules meeting where we set the agenda for our next session. We pretty much have one legislative session left. It's our last one. It will go from December 2nd for approximately 2 weeks. That's what I'm envisioning. We never know, we'll see. But that's the plan. So this bill has to be submitted to the body before then, for sure, if they are going to act on it. So that's my goal. So I'm going kind of with or without you. So you've got to put it in there if you want it, and let me know if there's any other concerns. All right. So I'm going to actually today's Monday. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to say Friday. We're going to start session next week. I'd like to get this bill in on Friday. Let me say Thursday, so I can put the bill in on Friday, and we'll be ready for session. All right? Oh, sorry. Thursday's Thanksgiving, so, well, that's up to you. But that's going to be my deadline. Okay? So, all right. So thank you again, everyone. And thank you again. Huge thanks to the board and all the individual professions of this board for working together, for really doing some intense work, detailed work, lots of research I know was involved, and a consensus that you were able to have the public hearings and pretty much bring a consensus to us. I very much appreciate that. So thank you again, and everybody have a great Thanksgiving. Si Diyos maasi. Our hearing is now ended. It is 7:08 p.m. Si Diyos maasi.